Welcome to Okinawa, a place of breathtaking beauty and a complex history. This is the story of Rina Shimabukuro, a bright 20-year-old with dreams of a large family. In 2015, she met Kenneth Gatson, an African-American former U.S. Marine who had served in Okinawa. They quickly fell in love, renting an apartment and building a life together. Rina was independent and ambitious, working diligently while also nurturing her desire for a future filled with children. Her colleagues described her as determined and responsible. One evening, after a long day at work, Rina decided to take a walk to clear her head. It was around 8 p.m., and the city was alive with the usual evening bustle, shops and restaurants still open, a mix of locals and tourists enjoying the warm air. Kenneth, working in an industrial area with late-night operations, felt a slight unease when Rina didn't return by late night. He initially assumed she had stayed out later than planned, perhaps meeting a friend. The next morning, Kenneth reported Rina missing. A citywide search began, fueled by growing concern and media attention. Missing person posters appeared all over Yuruma, a stark contrast to the usual tranquil atmosphere. The case quickly gained notoriety, especially given the long-standing tensions surrounding the U.S. military presence in Okinawa. Past incidents involving American servicemen had deeply affected the local community, and the disappearance of a young woman stirred up old wounds. Speculation ran rampant, with some whispering about a possible kidnapping. Kenneth, however, maintained his innocence, though his behavior during questioning raised red flags. He seemed strangely calm, offering little in the way of concrete information. The investigation led to a chilling confession. Kenneth Gatson was apprehended and eventually confessed to the horrific crime. He admitted to following Rina during her walk and attacking her behind with a metal object. When she resisted, he fatally stabbed her and then placed her body in a suitcase. Kenneth believed he had gotten away with it, but his confession shattered that illusion. The trial was highly publicized, with Rina's parents demanding the death penalty. They argued that such a brutal and senseless crime deserved the harshest punishment. The court ultimately sentenced Kenneth to life imprisonment. The verdict ignited widespread outrage in Okinawa. Protests erupted, with locals demanding fewer U.S. military bases and stricter controls over military personnel. The case of Rina Shimabukuro tragically reignited the long-simmering resentment towards the American presence on the island. While the Japanese government promised reforms, many remained suspicious, pointing fingers at Kenneth's boyfriend, questioning his role in Rina's life and disappearance. The incident became a symbol of the vulnerability of Okinawan women and the unresolved issues surrounding the military bases. Despite the conviction, the question lingered: why did it end there? The vibrant life of Rina Shimabukuro, full of dreams and aspirations, was extinguished in a single night. Her story serves as a stark reminder of the darkness that can exist even in the most beautiful of places. The case of Rina Shimabukuro remains a painful chapter in Okinawan history, a constant reminder of the need for greater safety and justice for all. The pursuit of answers continues, and the community grapples with the lasting impact of this tragedy. The courtroom clamor faded, but the investigation didn't. Detective Ishikawa stared at the cold case files, the weight of Rina's death pressing down on him. Sato entered, his face etched with exhaustion. The appeals process is underway, Ishikawa-san. The defense is claiming diminished capacity, citing Gatson's history of mental instability. Ishikawa sighed, rubbing his temples. Diminished capacity? After a confession? It feels incomplete. Sato nodded grimly. The judge agreed to allow a psychological evaluation. It could drag on for months. Ishikawa leaned forward. We need to understand why. Why Rina? Why now? Gatson seemed ordinary. A quiet accountant. This doesn't fit. He picked up a photograph of Rina, a vibrant smile, full of life. She was a bright light. Snuffed out. And we're still searching for the shadows that allowed it to happen. The case felt less closed, more like a wound that refused to heal, threatening to reopen with each passing day. The whispers of discontent in Okinawa grew louder, fueled by the lingering sense of injustice. Ishikawa knew the pressure was mounting, not just from the public, but from within the police force itself. Some felt the case was closed, a tragic but understandable act of violence. Hannah watched the shoppers pass, her fingers gently tracing the intricate designs on a woven basket. She often thought about Rena. They had been friends in high school, sharing dreams of studying abroad, of a future brimming with possibilities. Rena's sudden death had shattered that future, leaving a void in Hannah's life. A shadow of grief lingered, a constant reminder of what could have been. She'd noticed things about Rena in the weeks leading up to the attack, a subtle nervousness, a reluctance to walk alone at night. Rena had dismissed it as stress from her studies. Now, Hannah wondered if it was something more. A feeling gnawed at her, a sense that Rena had been watched, that someone had been following her. She'd tried to tell the police, but her concerns had been dismissed as mere speculation. Now, seeing the renewed protests and the lingering resentment towards the U.S. military, Hannah felt a growing unease. The community was simmering with anger, and she feared that this anger could be exploited. She clutched a small, silver charm, a gift from Rena. It was a reminder of their friendship, a symbol of the life that had been stolen. Hannah knew she couldn't remain silent. She had to find a way to honor Rena's memory, to uncover the truth, even if it meant facing danger. Ishikawa hunched over the monitor, the grainy security footage casting an eerie glow on his face. He'd been meticulously reviewing every camera angle along Rena's usual route, searching for any anomaly, any sign of surveillance. Days bled into nights, the endless loop of footage blurring his vision. Then, he saw it. A flicker of movement in a darkened alleyway, a figure partially obscured by shadows. The image was blurry, almost indecipherable, but there was something familiar about the way the person moved. He zoomed in, enhancing the image as much as possible. It was a fleeting glimpse, barely a second long, but it was enough. The figure seemed to be observing Rena from a distance, a silent stalker. Ishikawa's heart quickened. This wasn't just a random act of violence. It was planned. Calculated. He ran the image through facial recognition software, but the results were inconclusive. The image was too poor, the angle too obscure. Frustration gnawed at him. He needed a clearer image, a better angle. He felt a surge of adrenaline, a breakthrough. He wasn't just chasing a killer, he was unraveling a conspiracy. The blurry figure was the key, the missing piece of the puzzle. The salty air hung heavy with the scent of the sea. Sergeant Sato sat on a weathered bench beside Old Man Kaito, a seasoned fisherman who knew the coastline like the back of his hand. The moon cast a silvery path across the water. Sato explained the renewed concerns surrounding Rena's case, the growing unrest in the community. Kaito listened intently, his eyes reflecting the moonlight. He'd lived in Okinawa his entire life, witnessing generations of change and conflict. He spoke softly, his voice weathered by the sea and time. "The shadows run deep, Sergeant," he rasped. "This island, it holds many secrets. Old grudges, forgotten histories. The American presence, it stirs things up. But there are others, too. People who profit from the darkness." Sato pressed him gently. "Do you know anything about Rena? Anyone who might have wanted to harm her?" Kaito hesitated, his gaze drifting towards the dark water. "There's a man, a businessman. He's been buying up land near the base. Quietly. He doesn't belong here. He has eyes everywhere." Sato scribbled notes. "Can you give me a name?" Kaito shook his head. "No. He's careful. But watch him, Sergeant. Watch his shadow. It might lead you to the truth." The old man's words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken warnings. The office was opulent, sleek, modern, and impersonal. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the ocean, a stark contrast to the darkness that surrounded the man sitting behind the large desk. Mr. Harding, a businessman with a cold, calculating gaze, regarded Ishikawa with polite indifference. "Detective Ishikawa, to what do I owe the pleasure?" Ishikawa placed a photograph on the desk, a picture of Rena. "You were buying up land near the U.S. base, Mr. Harding. Acquiring it at suspiciously low prices. Why?" Harding's expression didn't change. I'm investing in the future of Okinawa, detective. Creating jobs, stimulating the economy. Ishikawa leaned forward. Rina Shimabukuro was a bright young woman. She was walking home late at night. Security footage shows you were in the vicinity. Care to explain? Harding chuckled softly. Coincidence, detective. I frequent those areas. I have a right to enjoy the scenery. Ishikawa's voice hardened. Don't play coy with me. We know you were observing her. We know you have a history of unpleasant behavior. You're connected to people who don't like the attention Rina's case is bringing. Harding's eyes narrowed. You have no proof. Ishikawa smiled grimly. Not yet. But we're getting there. Unusual activity reported near the old lighthouse a few nights ago, Kaito said, his voice raspy from years of sea air and tobacco. A small boat, moving fast, heading north. Didn't see a flag, no lights beyond the necessary navigation. Just, gone. Sato frowned, running a hand through his already disheveled hair. North of Rina's route? That's unexpected. She always stuck to the main coastal paths. Kaito nodded slowly. Perhaps she was being followed. Or perhaps, she was meeting someone. Someone she didn't want anyone to see. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the rhythmic crash of waves. Sato felt a knot tighten in his stomach. This wasn't just a simple disappearance anymore. This was something far more complicated, far more dangerous. He needed to find Rina, and fast. The lighthouse, a stark sentinel against the night, seemed to hold a silent, watchful presence. He wondered what secrets the sea held, and what role they might play in Rina's fate. He thanked Kaito, promising to return. The cold night air seemed to whisper warnings. Ishikawa zoomed in on the satellite image, his eyes bloodshot. The coastline north of the lighthouse was rugged, treacherous. Hidden coves and inlets dotted the landscape, perfect for clandestine meetings. He'd cross-referenced the boat sighting with shipping manifests, fishing logs, anything that might offer a clue. Nothing. It was as if the vessel had vanished into thin air. He leaned back in his chair, frustration building. Harding's involvement felt increasingly certain, but proving impossible. Harding was a master of obfuscation, a phantom in a world of finance. Ishikawa needed something concrete, something he could present to the authorities. He scrolled through Rina's files again, searching for any overlooked detail, any connection to the north. He found it, a small, almost insignificant entry, a business card for a marine surveyor, located in a town just north of the lighthouse. The name was Elias Thorne. A name Ishikawa had never heard before. The office smelled of old paper and brine. Elias Thorne looked up, startled by Ishikawa's sudden appearance. Can I help you? Thorne asked, his voice hesitant. Ishikawa showed him Rina's photograph. Do you recognize this woman? Thorne's eyes widened slightly. Yes. Rina. She commissioned me to survey a small section of coastline, about a week ago. Said she was interested in potential property investments. Did she mention anything else? Anyone she was meeting? Ishikawa pressed. Thorne hesitated. She mentioned a man. Said he was a potential buyer. Wealthy. Very discreet. She didn't give me a name, just said he preferred to remain anonymous. Ishikawa leaned forward. Did she say where they were meeting? Thorne swallowed hard. She mentioned the old lighthouse. Said it offered a certain privacy. Ishikawa felt a surge of adrenaline. The lighthouse. It all pointed back to the lighthouse. Thank you, Mr. Thorne. You've been very helpful. The lighthouse interior was cold and damp, the air thick with the smell of mildew and decay. Ishikawa moved cautiously, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The overturned chair was the only sign of a struggle, but it was subtle. Too subtle. He examined the floor carefully, searching for footprints, fibers, anything that could provide a clue. He found a small, metallic object, a button, detached from a coat. It was expensive, custom-made. He photographed it, carefully placing it in an evidence bag. This wasn't just a simple meeting gone wrong. This felt orchestrated, planned. He climbed the winding stairs to the top of the lighthouse, the wind howling around him. From the lantern room, he could see the vast, unforgiving ocean stretching out to the horizon. He felt a sense of unease, a feeling that he was being watched. Sergeant Sato stood on the cold, wet sand, the waves lapping at his boots. The lighthouse loomed behind him, a stark silhouette against the dawn sky. He stared out at the ocean, a deep sadness in his eyes. He thought of Rina, her vibrant spirit extinguished too soon. He knew Ishikawa was close, but the feeling of helplessness remained. He picked up a smooth, gray stone and tossed it into the sea. "I'll find you, Rina," he whispered to the waves. "I promise." He looked back at the lighthouse, a renewed determination hardening his gaze. The sea held its secrets, but he wouldn't give up. He owed it to Rina. He would unravel the truth, no matter how dark or dangerous it might be. The rising sun cast a pale light on the water, a fragile promise of hope in the face of despair. Elias swallowed hard, his throat suddenly dry. The woman in the photograph, it was Rina. He hadn't seen her in 5 years, not since the incident. "Rina," he breathed, the name a ghost on his lips. But how? He ran a hand through his thinning hair, a wave of dizziness washing over him. Ishikawa watched him, his expression unreadable. "She disappeared without a trace," Ishikawa stated, his voice flat. "The official report declared her lost at sea. But I believe something else happened." Thorn felt a knot form in his stomach. Rina was a talented marine biologist, specializing in unusual currents and underwater ecosystems. Her research had been groundbreaking, bordering on controversial. He'd always suspected she'd stumbled upon something dangerous. Something someone wanted to keep hidden. "What makes you think she's still alive?" Thorn asked, trying to keep the tremor from his voice. Ishikawa held up a small, intricately carved wooden pendant. "Rina always wore this. I found it near the lighthouse. It's a local craft, rarely seen." The pendant felt strangely familiar to Thorn, a forgotten memory resurfacing. This wasn't just a coincidence. This was a breadcrumb. The lighthouse keeper, Old Man Hemlock, shuffled towards them, his face etched with years of solitude and sea salt. He seemed startled by Ishikawa's presence. "What brings you here?" Hemlock rasped, his voice like pebbles grinding together. Ishikawa showed him the pendant. Hemlock's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of recognition passing over his weathered face. "Where did you get that?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "It belonged to Rina," Ishikawa replied. Hemlock hesitated, then nodded slowly. "She came here a few weeks ago," he said, glancing nervously towards the sea. "Asked about the old tunnels beneath the lighthouse." "Tunnels?" Thorn frowned. He'd never heard of any tunnels. "What tunnels?" he pressed. Hemlock wrung his hands. "Legends, mostly. Stories the old fishermen tell. They say there are passages leading to hidden coves, used by smugglers centuries ago." He paused, looking around as if afraid of being overheard. Rina was determined to find them. She believed there was something down there. A shiver ran down Thorn's spine. Smugglers, hidden coves, this was escalating quickly. He felt a growing sense of dread. Rina hadn't just disappeared, she'd been searching for something. Something dangerous. Ishikawa circled the base of the lighthouse, his flashlight beam dancing across the rough-hewn stone. He ran his hand along the cold, damp surface, searching for any irregularity, any hidden mechanism. The air smelled of seaweed and something else, something metallic. Thorn watched him, his mind racing. Tunnels, smugglers, hidden coves, it all felt like a scene from a forgotten adventure novel. But this was real. Rina was real. And she was in danger. Ishikawa stopped, his flashlight beam fixed on a section of the wall. "There's something here," he said, his voice low. He pressed against the stone, and with a grinding sound, a section of the wall slid inward, revealing a dark, narrow passage. A gust of cold, stale air rushed out, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and decay. The tunnels, Thorn whispered, a sense of foreboding washing over him. He knew, with a chilling certainty, that they were about to step into something far more sinister than he could have ever imagined. The tunnel was narrow and claustrophobic, the stone walls slick with moisture. The air was heavy and stagnant, making it difficult to breathe. Ishikawa led the way, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, revealing crumbling stone and cobwebs. Thorn followed close behind, his heart pounding in his chest. The tunnel sloped downwards, leading them deeper into the heart of the lighthouse. They passed several turns, each one more ominous than the last. The silence was broken only by the drip, drip, drip of water echoing through the passage. Suddenly, Ishikawa stopped. He pointed his flashlight at something on the floor. It was a small, leather-bound journal. Rina's journal. Thorn reached for it, his fingers trembling. He opened it carefully, his eyes scanning the handwritten pages. The last entry was dated the day she disappeared. It spoke of a discovery, a secret hidden within the tunnels. A secret that someone was willing to kill to protect. The last entry in Rina's journal was fragmented, water damage obscuring parts of the text. But Thorn could make out a few key phrases: the anomaly, it's real, they're watching, the artifact, must be protected, artifact? Anomaly? What was she talking about? Thorn felt a surge of frustration. Rina had been on the verge of a major breakthrough, something that had attracted unwanted attention. He looked up at Ishikawa, his expression grim. She found something, he said. Something dangerous. And she was right to be afraid. A sudden noise echoed through the tunnel, a scraping sound, coming from deeper within. Ishikawa tensed, raising his hand. We're not alone, he whispered. The darkness seemed to press in on them, filled with unseen eyes. Their investigation had just begun, and the stakes were higher than they could have ever imagined. The lighthouse held its secrets close, and Thorn and Ishikawa were about to uncover them, no matter the cost. Ishikawa pressed onward, the tunnel sloping downwards with increasing steepness. The scent of salt intensified, now mingled with a faint metallic odor. He noticed strange symbols etched into the stone walls, swirling patterns unlike any language he recognized. They seemed almost organic, as if grown into the rock itself. The air grew colder, a damp chill that seeped into his bones despite his layers of clothing. He considered the journal entry again, the anomaly, it's real. What kind of anomaly could be hidden beneath this ancient lighthouse? He felt a prickle of unease, a sense of being observed. The beam of his flashlight caught on something glinting in the darkness ahead. He cautiously approached, his heart pounding. It was a small, metal door, almost perfectly concealed within the stone. No handle, no hinges were visible. Just a seamless, metallic surface. He ran his hand over it, searching for a way to open it. This wasn't just a simple passage, this felt deliberately hidden, protected. Rina hadn't just mentioned an artifact, she'd hinted at a defense. With a soft hiss, the metallic door slid inward, revealing a chamber unlike anything Ishikawa could have imagined. The walls were lined with clusters of crystalline structures, pulsing with a soft, internal light. The light wasn't harsh, but rather ethereal, casting long, dancing shadows. The air within the chamber was noticeably warmer, and the metallic scent was stronger here, almost overwhelming. He took a tentative step inside, his flashlight beam sweeping across the room. The crystals varied in size and color, ranging from deep indigo to vibrant emerald. They hummed with a low, resonant frequency that vibrated through the floor and into his feet. In the center of the chamber, resting on a pedestal of polished stone, was an artifact. It was a sphere, no larger than a grapefruit, made of a dark, obsidian-like material. Runes, similar to those on the tunnel walls, spiraled across its surface. Thorn felt an undeniable pull towards it, a strange sense of recognition, as if he had seen it before in a dream. But there was also a warning, a subtle feeling of danger. The sphere pulsed with a faint, rhythmic light, the runes on its surface glowing brighter as Ishikawa approached. He reached out a hand, hesitant to touch it, drawn in by an inexplicable force. As his fingers neared the surface, a wave of energy washed over him, a tingling sensation that spread from his fingertips to his core. Images flashed through his mind, fleeting glimpses of strange landscapes, alien architectures, and beings of pure light. The visions were overwhelming, disorienting, leaving him breathless. He recoiled, pulling his hand back as if burned. The sphere's light dimmed slightly, as if sensing his discomfort. He realized this wasn't just an artifact, it was a conduit, a gateway to something far beyond human comprehension. Rina's warning echoed in his mind, must be protected, but from what? And why? A sudden tremor shook the chamber, sending dust and small crystals cascading from the walls. The humming of the crystals intensified, becoming a low, menacing drone. Ishikawa spun around, his flashlight beam darting towards the tunnel entrance. He heard a scraping sound, like stone against stone, growing louder with each passing second. Something was coming. He knew he couldn't stay here, the artifact had attracted unwanted attention. He glanced back at the sphere, a desperate feeling welling up inside him. He had to understand what it was, what it meant. But time was running out. He made a quick decision, carefully placing the flashlight beside the sphere, then retreating back through the narrow passage, the scraping sound growing closer. Ishikawa burst out of the tunnel and back into the lighthouse's base, gasping for air. The entrance to the tunnel was now partially blocked by rubble, as if something had tried to prevent his escape. He looked back at the darkness of the tunnel, a knot of fear tightening in his stomach. Whatever had made that sound was powerful, and it was clearly not something he wanted to confront head-on. He reached for his radio, attempting to contact Thorn, but the signal was dead. He was alone. The lighthouse, once a symbol of safety and guidance, now felt like a trap. He knew he couldn't just leave it. The artifact, the anomaly, Rina's warning, it all pointed to a larger, more dangerous game. He had to find Thorn, and they had to figure out what was happening before it was too late. Ishikawa wrestled with a large chunk of stone, his muscles straining. The tremor had clearly caused significant damage. He needed to get back to the sphere, to understand what was happening. The humming from within the lighthouse pulsed louder now, a tangible vibration in the floor. He glanced back at the tunnel, a growing unease settling in his stomach. It felt like something was watching him, something ancient and powerful. He couldn't shake the feeling that his escape wasn't so simple. The crystalline structures on the walls seemed to shift and shimmer in his peripheral vision, playing tricks on his eyes. He pushed harder on the rubble, determined to breach the blockage. Each movement sent small showers of dust into the air, further obscuring his view. He muttered to himself, a mix of frustration and determination. Just a little further, he grunted. The air grew thick with a strange, metallic scent, and the rhythmic pulsing of the sphere echoed in his mind. He knew time was running out. He paused, catching his breath. The metallic scent was stronger now, almost overwhelming. It reminded him of old blood, but not quite. He wiped his brow with the back of his hand, leaving a streak of dirt across his forehead. The flashlight beam trembled slightly. He realized he wasn't just dealing with geological instability, something was actively hindering him. The runes on the sphere, he remembered, had seemed to react to his presence, glowing with an almost sentient light. What if the lighthouse itself was alive? What if it was protecting the sphere? A shiver ran down his spine. He felt a presence, a subtle pressure on his mind, urging him to turn back. But the curiosity, the scientific imperative, was too strong to ignore. He took a deep breath, steeling his resolve. He wouldn't be deterred. He had to know what the sphere was, and what it wanted. He resumed his efforts, his movements more deliberate now, as if anticipating resistance. The crystalline formation pulsed with an inner light, mirroring the sphere's rhythm. It was larger than the others, almost like a heart beating within the stone. The light intensified, casting strange, dancing shadows across the walls. Ishikawa noticed intricate patterns within the crystal, swirling lines and geometric shapes that seemed to shift and rearrange themselves. It wasn't just a geological anomaly, it felt intentional. He reached out a hand towards it, hesitant but drawn in. As his fingers approached, the crystal emitted a low hum, vibrating through the floor and into his bones. He felt a surge of energy, a tingling sensation that spread through his body. Images flashed through his mind, swirling galaxies, ancient symbols, and faces he didn't recognize. It was overwhelming, disorienting. He stumbled back, clutching his head. The lighthouse was communicating, not through sound or light, but through something deeper, something more primal. He knelt down, ignoring the dust and debris, and carefully examined the base of the crystalline structure. The patterns were more pronounced here, etched into the crystal's surface like ancient writing. He recognized some of the symbols from the sphere, the spiraling glyphs, the interlocking triangles. But there were others, unfamiliar and unsettling. As he traced the patterns with his finger, a section of the crystal shimmered and dissolved, revealing a small, recessed chamber. Inside the chamber lay a single object, a smooth, obsidian stone, pulsating with a faint, inner light. It felt warm to the touch, and a strange energy emanated from it, a feeling of immense power and ancient knowledge. He reached for the stone, his heart pounding in his chest. He had found something truly significant. The moment his fingers closed around the obsidian stone, the lighthouse erupted in a blinding flash of light. The humming intensified, becoming a deafening roar. The sphere pulsed with an even brighter light, and the crystalline formations glowed with an otherworldly radiance. Ishikawa felt a surge of power coursing through his veins, a connection to something vast and ancient. Images flooded his mind, visions of cosmic events, of civilizations rising and falling, of the universe itself being born and dying. He understood, in that instant, that the sphere wasn't just an object, it was a key, a gateway to something far beyond human comprehension. The obsidian stone was the key to unlocking that gateway. And he, Ishikawa, was now holding it. The lighthouse seemed to be guiding him, pulling him towards the sphere. His journey had just begun. Ishikawa gasped, a jolt of energy surging through his arm. The obsidian felt warm, alive, humming against his palm. The symbols on the crystal pulsed in response, mirroring the rhythm of the stone. He felt a connection, a strange resonance that transcended understanding. The air crackled with static, raising the hairs on his neck. The roaring intensified, and the lighthouse shook violently. He tried to pull his hand away, but the stone seemed fused to his skin. He could feel images flooding his mind, swirling galaxies, ancient civilizations, and a looming darkness. This wasn't just a stone, it was a key, a conduit to something immense and powerful. The crystalline heart above seemed to beat faster, echoing the frantic rhythm of his own heart. He wondered what he had unleashed. The lighthouse trembled as the energy escalated. The sphere spun faster, a vortex of light and shadow. The crystalline structures pulsed with an almost painful intensity, their light reflecting off the walls and floor. Ishikawa struggled to maintain his focus, the visions overwhelming him. He saw glimpses of a world consumed by darkness, a celestial entity of immense power. The obsidian stone seemed to be drawing energy from the sphere, amplifying its power. He realized the symbols weren't just writing, they were a language, a command. He instinctively tried to push back, to sever the connection, but it was too late. The energy was flowing too freely. The lighthouse was no longer a beacon, it was a gateway. Fear warred with a strange sense of purpose within Ishikawa. He understood, somehow, that he was the only one who could control this. The visions were becoming clearer, revealing a prophecy, a looming threat. The darkness wasn't just a force, it was an entity, an ancient being seeking to reclaim its dominion over the universe. The obsidian stone was a weapon, a key to either sealing it away or unleashing it upon the world. He had to choose. He focused his will, trying to channel the energy flowing through him, to direct it, to contain it. The lighthouse groaned under the strain, the very structure threatening to collapse. With a surge of effort, Ishikawa directed the energy from the obsidian stone towards the sphere. A beam of pure blue light shot forth, impacting the sphere with a resounding boom. The crystalline structures vibrated violently, the light intensifying to an unbearable brilliance. For a moment, everything hung in the balance. The sphere pulsed, resisted, then shuddered. The swirling darkness within seemed to recede, pushed back by the concentrated energy. The lighthouse groaned, but held. The vision subsided, replaced by a profound sense of exhaustion. The light slowly faded, the roaring subsided, and the lighthouse fell silent. The sphere still pulsed, but its energy was contained, its threat diminished. Ishikawa staggered, his legs weak, but he stood firm. The obsidian stone felt inert in his hand, its power spent. He had averted disaster, but he knew this was only a temporary victory. The darkness was still out there, waiting. He looked at the crystalline formations, now glowing with a gentle, reassuring light. He had a long road ahead, a responsibility to protect the world from the shadows. He knew his journey had just begun. Ishikawa leaned heavily against the cold stone wall, catching his breath. The sphere, while contained, still radiated a subtle, unsettling hum. He felt drained, as if a significant portion of his life force had been expended. The prophecy, it hadn't been a simple warning. The darkness wasn't merely an external force, it was intertwined with the very fabric of this island, with the history etched into its ancient stones. He understood now why the legends spoke of guardians, of sacrifices. This wasn't a battle he could win alone, not with brute force. The obsidian stone, a conduit of immense power, was now depleted. He needed to understand the nature of the darkness, its source, its weaknesses. A chilling realization crept into his mind: containing the sphere was only a temporary measure. It would eventually find a way to escape, to reassert its influence. The true challenge lay not in suppression, but in understanding and ultimately, in severing the connection. He had a feeling the answers lay hidden within the island's forgotten past, within the stories whispered by the wind and the waves. He closed his eyes, trying to focus, to access the fragmented visions that had guided him thus far. They were fleeting, elusive, like trying to grasp smoke. But he had to persevere. The night deepened, and the island seemed to hold its breath. The sea, usually a restless companion, was now agitated, mirroring the turmoil within Ishikawa. He descended from the lighthouse, the obsidian stone still clutched in his hand, a constant reminder of the immense power he had wielded, and the power he still lacked. The visions intensified, pulling him towards the island's western coast, towards a hidden cove shrouded in mist and legend. The glow emanating from that location pulsed with an unnatural rhythm, a heartbeat of the darkness. He knew, instinctively, that this was the key. The cove wasn't marked on any map, not even the ancient ones housed in the island's crumbling library. It was a place deliberately concealed, forgotten by time. Local tales spoke of rituals performed there, of offerings made to appease ancient entities. Ishikawa felt a growing sense of dread, but also a strange compulsion to proceed. He wasn't merely investigating a threat, he was drawn to it, pulled by an unseen force. The air grew colder as he approached the cove, the scent of salt and decay heavy in the air. He could feel the darkness pressing in, a palpable presence that seemed to seep from the very rocks. The path was treacherous, barely more than a game trail overgrown with thorny vines and gnarled roots. Bioluminescent fungi cast an unsettling green glow, illuminating the path ahead with an ethereal, otherworldly light. The air was thick with humidity, and the silence was broken only by the rustling of unseen creatures in the undergrowth. Ishikawa moved slowly, cautiously, his senses on high alert. He felt watched, scrutinized by something hidden in the shadows. The visions grew more vivid, showing him glimpses of ancient stone structures, of strange symbols carved into the rock face. He recognized them from the library, symbols associated with the old ones, beings of immense power who predated even the island's earliest inhabitants. The path narrowed, leading him towards a sheer cliff face that plunged directly into the sea. At the base of the cliff, almost hidden by the crashing waves, was the entrance to the cove. A sense of foreboding washed over him. This place felt wrong. It was a place where the veil between worlds was thin, where the darkness held sway. He steeled himself, knowing that he was about to enter a realm beyond human comprehension. The entrance to the cove was a gaping maw in the cliff face, a dark and forbidding opening partially submerged by the churning sea. The ethereal glow was strongest here, pulsating with an unnatural intensity. It seemed to beckon him forward, promising answers, but also threatening oblivion. Ishikawa hesitated, a wave of doubt washing over him. Was he truly prepared for what lay within? The obsidian stone, still in his hand, felt cold and inert, offering no comfort. He took a deep breath, reminding himself of the prophecy, of the responsibility he carried. He couldn't turn back now. The fate of the island, and perhaps more, depended on him. He stepped into the darkness, the cold seawater lapping at his boots. The glow intensified, enveloping him in a sea of green light. He felt a strange tingling sensation, as if his very atoms were being rearranged. The air grew heavy, charged with an unseen energy. The cove opened into a vast cavern, dominated by a colossal altar carved from black stone. The altar was covered in intricate symbols, unlike anything Ishikawa had ever seen. They pulsed with a faint, malevolent energy, seeming to writhe before his eyes. Above the altar, a swirling vortex of dark energy hung suspended in the air, crackling with power. The source of the glow, the source of the darkness. It was a gateway, a tear in the fabric of reality. Ishikawa felt a surge of fear, but also a strange sense of recognition. He had seen these symbols before, in the deepest recesses of his mind, in the fragmented visions that had plagued him for so long. This was the nexus, the point where the darkness entered the world. He knew, with chilling certainty, that he had to stop it, even if it meant sacrificing everything. The vortex pulsed, growing stronger, drawing energy from the island, from the sea, from the very air itself. He raised his hands, preparing to confront the darkness, to sever the connection once and for all. Ishikawa hesitated at the cavern's edge, the oppressive silence amplifying the frantic beat of his heart. The altar dominated the space, a monument to something ancient and profoundly unsettling. The symbols weren't simply carved, they seemed to grow from the stone, shifting and rearranging themselves in his peripheral vision. He reached out a gloved hand, drawn by an irresistible curiosity, yet a primal instinct screamed at him to retreat. The air crackled with an unseen energy, raising the hairs on his arms. He felt a pull, a subtle urging to touch the cold, smooth surface of the altar. This wasn't just a place of worship, it was a conduit, a nexus of power unlike anything he had ever encountered. The bioluminescent fungi pulsed faster, their green light intensifying, painting the cavern in an unsettling, otherworldly hue. He noticed faint glyphs etched into the floor around the altar, almost invisible beneath the dust and grime of centuries. They hinted at rituals, at sacrifices, at a history best left undisturbed. Ishikawa knew, with a chilling certainty, that he was not the first to stumble upon this place, and he doubted he would be the last. A whisper seemed to slither through the air, too faint to discern words, yet potent enough to send shivers down his spine. His fingers trembled as they neared the altar's surface. The coldness seeped through his glove, a sensation that resonated deep within his bones. The symbols flared, their malevolent energy intensifying, bathing his hand in an emerald light. A wave of dizziness washed over him, and the cavern seemed to spin. Images flooded his mind, grotesque figures performing arcane rituals, celestial bodies aligning in impossible configurations, and a vast, swirling darkness that threatened to consume everything. He gasped, pulling his hand back as if burned. The visions receded, leaving him disoriented and breathless. The air grew thick and heavy, making it difficult to breathe. The whispering intensified, forming fragmented words, tantalizing promises of power and knowledge. He felt a strange compulsion, a desire to delve deeper, to understand the secrets held within the altar's cryptic symbols. But a flicker of defiance remained, a stubborn refusal to succumb to the cavern's allure. He clenched his fist, fighting against the insidious pull. He had come seeking answers about the missing expedition, not a descent into madness. Ishikawa forced himself to regain control, focusing on the task at hand. He activated his handheld scanner, directing its beam at the intricate carvings. The device hummed, analyzing the symbols, cross-referencing them with every known language and arcane text in his database. The scanner's display flickered with indecipherable data, a chaotic jumble of symbols and equations. He ran a spectral analysis, hoping to identify the source of the energy emanating from the altar. The results were baffling. The energy signature didn't match any known element or force. It was otherworldly. He noted the specific arrangement of the glyphs, meticulously documenting each detail. He suspected the symbols weren't merely decorative, they were a key, a complex code that unlocked something far beyond his comprehension. The whispering continued, now laced with a hint of frustration. It seemed the altar was resisting his attempts to decipher its secrets. Suddenly, the altar erupted in a blinding flash of green light. The cymbals pulsed with an almost unbearable intensity, and the cavern shook violently. A beam of emerald energy shot upwards, piercing the cavern roof and disappearing into the darkness above. Dust and debris rained down, obscuring the already dim light. Ishikawa stumbled back, shielding his eyes. The whispering intensified into a deafening roar, filling the cavern with a cacophony of voices. The air crackled with raw power, and the scent of ozone filled his nostrils. He realized, with growing horror, that he had triggered something. Something ancient and powerful. The ground beneath him trembled, and cracks spiderwebbed across the cavern floor. He knew he had to leave, and leave now. The cove, once a place of mystery, was rapidly becoming a death trap. Ishikawa didn't hesitate. He turned and ran, scrambling over the treacherous terrain towards the cove's entrance. The green light continued to pulse from above, casting long, distorted shadows that danced around him. He could hear the sound of rock crumbling and falling as the cavern destabilized. He risked a glance back at the altar. The cymbals were now burning with an infernal glow, and a swirling vortex of green energy was forming above it. He knew that whatever he had unleashed was not something he could contain. He had to get out, warn the others, and find a way to stop it. He reached the entrance to the cove, the churning sea a beacon of hope. But as he plunged into the darkness, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. That the entity within the altar was not finished with him yet. The adventure had just begun. Ishikawa's lungs burned, each breath a ragged gasp. The echoing rumble of collapsing rock spurred him onward. He risked a glance back, the green light intensified, now painting grotesque shapes on the cavern walls. Something was being summoned, unleashed. He had to reach the cove. The scanner, still clutched in his hand, beeped erratically, overwhelmed by the energy surge. He wondered what arcane power he had unwittingly triggered. This wasn't just ancient history, this was something alive. The air crackled with an unfamiliar energy, raising the hairs on his arms. He pushed harder, his boots slipping on loose stone. The scent of ozone filled his nostrils, sharp and metallic. He prayed the cove was close enough. Failure wasn't an option. The fate of everything might depend on containing whatever that light had awakened. He focused on the distant sliver of daylight, a beacon of hope in the encroaching darkness. The ground vibrated beneath his feet, a low, ominous thrum that resonated deep within his bones. He had to outrun it. He had to survive. Fear threatened to paralyze him, but Ishikawa fought it back. He couldn't afford to succumb to panic. He needed to think, to adapt. The energy signature emanating from the cavern roof was unlike anything he'd encountered. It wasn't purely magical, there was a technological component woven into the raw power. A distortion. Someone had tampered with this place, amplified something dormant. He wondered who, and why. The symbols he'd scanned earlier now seemed to writhe and shift in his memory, hinting at a ritual, a key. He briefly considered trying to disrupt the energy flow with the scanner, but the risk was too great. It could make things worse. He needed to get away, to find somewhere safe to analyze the data. He pictured Dr. Aris, her sharp mind and unwavering resolve. He had to get back to her, to share what he'd found. His legs screamed in protest, but he pressed on, driven by a desperate hope. He wouldn't let this power spread. He stumbled onto the rocky beach of the cove, collapsing onto the damp sand. The sudden shift from the claustrophobic cavern to the open air was jarring. He gasped for breath, the salty air a welcome change from the acrid scent of energy. The green light still pulsed overhead, but it seemed weaker now, less focused. He looked up, searching for the source, but the cavern roof was obscured by swirling clouds. The waves crashed against the rocks, a rhythmic roar that slowly began to calm his racing heart. He noticed something glinting in the sand near the water's edge. He cautiously approached, his hand instinctively reaching for the small knife at his belt. It was a metallic shard, pulsating with a faint green glow. It felt warm to the touch. He picked it up, examining it closely. It was perfectly smooth, unnaturally so. This wasn't a natural formation. This was a piece of the mechanism. The shard felt strangely familiar, as if he had seen something like it before. He turned it over in his hand, studying its surface. Tiny, almost invisible markings covered its surface, a complex network of lines and curves. They weren't symbols he recognized, but they resonated with something deep within him. He brought the shard closer to his scanner, hoping for a reading, but the device remained unresponsive. The energy signature was too chaotic, too unstable. He realized that this shard wasn't just a fragment, it was a component, a key piece of the puzzle. He felt a growing sense of dread. This wasn't just about containing a power, it was about understanding it. And he had a feeling that understanding would come at a steep price. The ocean roared, a constant reminder of the vast, unknown forces at play. He needed to analyze this shard, to decipher its secrets, before it was too late. He stood on the beach, the cool spray of the ocean misting his face. The green light still flickered above, a constant, unsettling presence. He knew he couldn't stay here. The cove offered temporary refuge, but it wasn't a solution. He had to find a way to neutralize the energy source, to sever the connection. He looked out at the endless expanse of the ocean, a sense of grim determination settling over him. He wouldn't let whatever had been awakened destroy the world. He would find a way. He would use every skill, every resource at his disposal. This shard, this strange piece of technology, was the key. He closed his eyes, focusing on the faint energy pulsing within the stone. He had a feeling the answers he sought were hidden within its depths. He took a deep breath, and turned towards the horizon. The journey was far from over. The shard hummed faintly against his palm, a vibration that resonated deep within his bones. It wasn't painful, just insistent. He felt a pull, a subtle urging to focus on the markings etched into its surface. They seemed to shift and rearrange themselves as he looked, like a living map. The green light above intensified, casting strange shadows that danced across the sand. He tried to recall where he'd seen something similar. Fragments of dreams, fleeting images of impossible architecture, flickered at the edge of his awareness. He felt a growing sense of urgency, a feeling that time was slipping away. He needed to understand what this thing was, and quickly. The ocean waves crashed against the shore, a rhythmic counterpoint to the shard's silent hum. He closed his eyes, concentrating on the patterns, willing them to reveal their secrets. A wave of dizziness washed over him, and he stumbled, nearly dropping the shard. He steadied himself, his heart pounding. This wasn't just a discovery, it felt like an awakening. A forgotten memory struggling to surface. He had a feeling this shard held the key to everything. The air around him crackled with energy, and the green light pulsed brighter, as if responding to his concentration. He started walking along the beach, the shard held aloft. The green light seemed to guide him, pulling him towards the distant silhouette. It was difficult to make out details in the fading light, but it appeared to be some kind of structure, impossibly tall and angular. It didn't look natural, not like anything he'd ever seen on Earth. The sand felt strangely warm beneath his feet, and the air grew thick with a metallic scent. The humming of the shard intensified, vibrating through his entire body. He felt a growing sense of dread, a primal fear that whispered of something ancient and powerful. The green light pulsed faster, and the markings on the shard seemed to glow with an inner fire. He quickened his pace, drawn towards the unknown. He glanced back at the cove, the familiar rocky shore now shrouded in shadow. He knew he was leaving behind a place of temporary safety, venturing into something far more dangerous. But he couldn't turn back. The shard demanded it, a silent command that resonated within him. The structure in the distance grew larger, its silhouette becoming more defined. He could now make out strange, geometric shapes in sharp angles. It was a monument to a forgotten civilization, a testament to a power he couldn't comprehend. The structure loomed closer, its obsidian surface reflecting the green light in distorted patterns. The carvings on its surface weren't just decorations, they were complex symbols, a language he instinctively felt he should understand. They seemed to writhe and shift as he approached, like living entities. The green light emanating from within the structure intensified, casting an unsettling glow on the surrounding landscape. It felt like a beacon, a call to something vast and powerful. He could hear a low, resonant hum coming from the structure, a sound that vibrated deep within his chest. The air grew colder, despite the warmth radiating from the sand. He felt a strange pressure building in his head, as if something was trying to force its way into his mind. The shard in his hand pulsed with energy, mirroring the light from the structure. He realized that the shard wasn't just a key, it was a conduit. A bridge between worlds. He hesitated for a moment, a flicker of doubt crossing his mind. Was he making a mistake? Was he walking into a trap? But the pull of the shard, the insistent hum, overwhelmed his hesitation. He had to know what was inside. He had to understand the secrets of this place. He stood at the base of the structure, dwarfed by its immense size. The green light from the shard shot out, connecting to a glowing symbol on the structure's surface. The symbol pulsed with energy, and a wave of power surged through Elias, knocking him to his knees. Images flooded his mind, swirling galaxies, alien landscapes, and beings of pure energy. He saw glimpses of a civilization far beyond human comprehension, a civilization that had mastered the secrets of the universe. The shard vibrated violently in his hand, and the structure seemed to hum in response. He felt a connection, a merging of consciousness. He wasn't just looking at the structure, he was becoming a part of it. The symbols on the structure came alive, swirling around him like a vortex. He felt himself being pulled forward, drawn into the heart of the edifice. Resistance was futile. The power was too great. He closed his eyes, surrendering to the unknown. This wasn't an invasion, it was an invitation. An invitation to join something larger than himself. He opened his eyes to a world of impossible geometry and pulsating light. He was inside the structure, surrounded by towering walls covered in glowing symbols. The air crackled with energy, and the ground hummed beneath his feet. He wasn't alone. Shadowy figures moved around him, their forms indistinct and ephemeral. They didn't seem hostile, more like guardians or observers. They were composed of pure shadow, yet they radiated an aura of immense power. He felt a sense of awe, tinged with fear. The shadowy figures approached him, and one of them extended a hand. It wasn't a physical hand, but a tendril of darkness that shimmered with energy. He hesitated for a moment, then reached out and took it. A surge of knowledge flooded his mind, the history of the civilization that had built this structure, their rise and fall, their mastery of energy and consciousness. He understood now. The shard wasn't just a key, it was a link to their collective memory. He was no longer Elias, the lost explorer. He was something more. He was a vessel, a conduit for their legacy. The shadowy figures nodded, a silent acknowledgement. His journey had just begun. He was now a part of something ancient, powerful, and infinitely vast. Shah extended a hand, her eyes filled with a serene understanding. The shard, it's a key, Elias. A key to understanding the architects. They weren't conquerors, not in the way you might think. They were gardeners. Shaping realities, nurturing life across dimensions. The symbols aren't a language, but a symphony, a blueprint for creation. Elias felt the power within him stabilize, no longer a jarring surge but a gentle current. He understood now. The architects didn't impose their will, they guided, coaxed, and fostered growth. The obsidian structure wasn't a fortress, but a seed vault, preserving the potential for countless worlds. Shah explained that the green light was a resonance frequency, a signal to awaken dormant energies within him, the ability to shape reality on a small scale, to heal, to create. His journey wasn't about conquering, but about cultivating. He looked around at the crystalline forms, each a potential universe waiting to bloom. A sense of profound responsibility settled upon him, but it wasn't a burden. It was an invitation. He wasn't just Elias anymore, he was a steward of creation, a guardian of potential. Shah smiled. Your path has just begun. They stepped through a shimmering portal, emerging onto a world bathed in the violet light of twin suns. The air was thick with the scent of exotic blossoms and damp earth. Below them stretched a valley filled with towering, tree-like structures that pulsed with an inner light. Strange, winged creatures with iridescent scales soared through the sky, their calls echoing in the alien air. This is one of the worlds they nurtured, Shah said, her voice filled with wonder. A world of harmony, where life thrives in balance. The architects ensured its stability, its potential for continued growth. Elias gazed at the landscape, feeling a sense of awe he had never known. It was a testament to the architects' gentle power, a living embodiment of their philosophy. He saw not just beauty, but intricate systems, interconnectedness, a delicate balance maintained over eons. Shah placed a hand on his arm. "You have a gift, Elias. The ability to foster such balance, to nurture life wherever it may be found. But it comes with a responsibility. The universe is fragile. Potential can be easily corrupted." He nodded, understanding the weight of her words. The journey had changed him, stripping away his cynicism and replacing it with a sense of purpose. The obsidian structure stood silent, its surface no longer reflecting distorted images, but radiating a soft, internal luminescence. Shah's form flickered, becoming increasingly transparent. "My time here is ending, Elias," she said, her voice fading. "My purpose was to guide you, to awaken the potential within you. Now, you must walk your own path." Elias reached out, his hand passing through her shimmering form. "I don't want you to go," he said, a sense of loss washing over him. "I need you." Shah smiled sadly. "You don't need me, Elias. You have everything you need within you now. Remember the symphony, remember the balance. And never forget that even in the darkest corners of the universe, there is always the potential for growth." Her form dissolved completely, leaving only a faint warmth in the air. Elias stood alone before the structure, the weight of his newfound responsibility settling upon him. He closed his eyes, focusing on the symphony of energy within him, the blueprint for creation. He was ready. He had a universe to cultivate. He stood in a quiet forest, the familiar scent of pine needles filling his lungs. Sunlight dappled through the leaves, illuminating the forest floor. He knelt beside a withered plant, its leaves brown and brittle. He reached out, his hand hovering over it, and focused on the energy within him, the resonance of the architect's symphony. A gentle warmth flowed from his hand, enveloping the plant. The withered leaves unfurled, turning a vibrant green. Tiny buds appeared, bursting into colorful blossoms. The plant sprang back to life, its beauty amplified. Elias smiled, a genuine smile of peace and purpose. He looked around at the forest, seeing not just trees and plants, but a network of interconnected life, a potential for growth and harmony. He was home, but he was no longer the same man who had left. He was a guardian, a cultivator, a steward of potential. His journey had just begun, and he was ready to embrace it, one bloom at a time. He turned and walked towards the setting sun, a subtle golden glow surrounding him. The forest seemed to hum with energy in his wake, plants reaching towards him as if in greeting. He wasn't running from anything anymore, he was moving towards a future filled with purpose and potential. The weight of the universe rested lightly on his shoulders, not as a burden, but as a privilege. He knew there would be challenges, setbacks, moments of doubt. But he also knew that he wasn't alone. He carried the memory of Shah, the knowledge of the architects, and the potential for countless worlds within him. As he walked towards the horizon, he was a beacon of hope, a testament to the power of growth, a living embodiment of the symphony of creation. The world awaited, and he was ready to nurture it.